2 live. Hi, thanks for joining us today. This evening I wanted to talk about wealth redistribution and how it's possible to do it peacefully. I've been reading online of comments of other people who seem to be calling for guillotines. The return of the guillotine from, like, say, the French Revolution, as was done there. Now that was an example of violent transfer of wealth. Violent wealth redistribution. I don't think it has to be that way, and it should not be that way. That's a very scary event that happened back then, where blood was rolling in the streets. We don't want that. I don't want that. And I wanted to talk today about how the history of Sweden, some events happened where they were able to transfer wealth very peacefully, just through legal transfer of property. And I think we can do that in this country as well. In the United States, being the country, that's the country I live in, and where the concentration of wealth into the hands of a few has gotten gets more and more absurd with each passing year, with each passing decade, regardless of what party is in control of Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. There's the plutocracy has gotten just only more and more entrenched with greater hoarding of wealth with absolutely no limitation on that hoarding. That needs to stop. There needs to be limitation on how much wealth can be hoarded. Right, as it currently stands, there is an absurd hoarding that's gotten to the point of being absurd and obscene. But I think there's been a lot of frustration among the masses how there's been no resolution in sight whatsoever of that hoarding. And as a result of that frustration, we see of these calls for the guillotines. Presumably in America, they just say, you know, kind of subtle about it. They say guillotines. They want return of those. I call the French Revolution an act of the passive-aggressive syndrome on a mass scale, where the people don't do anything for so long. They just be passive. In the passive, right now, we're still, as a society, we're still in the passive stage regarding the plutocracy. Then once it gets to a point where their frustration just builds and builds, and they just keep being quiet, silent majority, until finally, at least in the case of the French Revolution, they blew their top and just went to the aggressive side, to the extreme and scary extent. I don't want to see that. I would like to be just nice through just simply by changing a few words on some titles of ownership, on a piece of paper, and some county, probably be county government office. All you have to do is just change a few letters and numbers in the title, change it from some wealthy individual or corporation or some other extremely wealthy institution. Change it from that to either a group of people, common people, middle class, lower class folk. Either change it to their names or change it to the name of like a non-governmental organization, such like a food pantry, food shelf, or just change it to the name of the government, a city, county, state, or federal government. Changing the title. That's all you need to do. No heads need to roll. Nobody even has to go to prison. And okay, now I'm going to tell you about this as detailed. The history, the precedent, where the precedent has been set, found it in this book, Swedish History in Brief, by Ingvar Andersson. For the first instance I came across was King Gustav Vasa of Sweden. And that's what they're talking about here. And I'm going to read from this Small book. It's like a booklet. For Gustav Vasa, his first royal concern was the stabilization of the state finances. By resolute measures at the Lasterovs Riksdag in 1527, he created the conditions necessary for the confiscation by the state of all property in the hands of the Roman Catholic Church. Since at the end of the Middle Ages, the church held 21% of the Swedish soil, as compared with only 5.6% owned by the crown. This represented an immense addition to the strength of the state. Now that was, but like I say, no heads rolled. All they did was change the ownership from that of the Roman Catholic Church to that of the crown of Sweden, or the state. So let's see here, increased confiscation by the state. So it sounds like it was the state. So it was put in the title of the state of Sweden. All that land that was confiscated from the Roman Catholic Church. So that's where the names changed on the title. Ownership title to the property, that 21% that had been held by the Roman Catholic Church. That's a lot of land. That was owned by the church, and then they just changed it. Sounds like they just changed the title on all those acres from that of the Roman Catholic Church at the top, probably owned by Roman Catholic Church. They erased that a little bit. Maybe use some what kind of whiteout they used back then, or maybe they just drew up a whole new one, new document. But it's just simple little writing change. Do some little ancient write out. There's a little white paint. Painted over Roman Catholic Church and wrote on the state or country of Sweden. No heads rolled. That doesn't sound like anybody even went to prison. Why can't we do that in the United States? For all the stocks, bonds, real estate, just change the name of the owner of that. And that's how the taxation would work. I know we can't just confiscate without compensation specifically. That would violate the Fifth Amendment, I believe. But there's a workaround to that. It's called taxes. The courts have ruled decisively that taxation is not a violation of the Fifth Amendment. So we'll call it a tax. And then we can allow these transfer of ownership of these properties from that of the wealthy to that of the people, to that of the state, county, city. Let's say that transfers in lieu of payment of those taxes. So they did it in Sweden. Can be done. Shows it can be done. There's another example in here. They did that again later on. A similar program. I got to read that here. All right, when peace was concluded in 1679, the king began a gigantic task of reorganization reminiscent of Gustav Vasa's a century and a half earlier. That was Gustav Vasa. That was the one I was just talking about. Now we have another king. It was King Carl Gustav the 11th. It looks like. Yeah, when peace was concluded in 1679, the king began a gigantic task of reorganization reminiscent of Gustav Vasa's a century and a half earlier. Okay, I already read that sentence. This is customarily referred to as Carl XI's reduction, i.e., by vote of parliament, the nobles were reduced as the crown repossessed a large part of the estates they had obtained for themselves. At the end of this reorganization, the property distribution was once more radically changed. The crown now held 35.6% of the soil, the nobles only 32.9%, and the independent farmers 31.5%. In accordance with a detailed plan, the king used the income from state properties to cover all expenses of the crown, such as military and civil service payrolls. Now, why can't we do that too? This is example of the government effectively owning the means of production. Back then, it was a lot of it was agriculture, but still, as producing. The government of Sweden owned the means of production, and they used the income they generated from that production to fund the state, fund the expenses of the state. They acquired the revenue from that land. The revenue the got from land, they used it to fund the operations of the state. I think that's a great idea. I think that's something we can do now. So in this day and age, in the United States of America, we can have the country, the nation. We can have states, state governments, like the state of Minnesota, where I live. They could own industry. Now, right now, for some reason, the state and municipalities, they seem to limit their production to either recreation or entertainment. For instance, I live in Burnsville, Minnesota. The city owns an entertainment center, a theater, where they put on concerts and plays. It's called the Ames Center. It's owned by the city, and just recently, I think 2017, they turned a very small profit, but it was profit nonetheless. But effectively, they're producing, they're owning the means of production of entertainment. And in northern Minnesota, there's a state-owned facility called Giants Ridge. That's where they have, in the wintertime, downhill skiing, cross-country skiing. They might even have some snowmobiling. And they have some lodges. You can rent, it's like a overnight hotel, a little motel there. A lodge, basically. And they rent out the rooms, and of course, they have lift tickets and trail passes they sell and get some revenue from that. But it's been operational now for a number of decades. And yeah, the state owns Giants Ridge, a recreation center. And in the summertime, they have a golf facility. I believe 18-hole golf course, supposed to be pretty nice. So there's already precedent of the state owning the means of production of recreation and a city owning entertainment. But for some reason, normally the states and municipalities limit themselves to entertainment or their recreation, but they don't get into industry. I think that's something that could happen. We could start a state-owned industry and use the revenue from that to fund the state's operations. Now, there's an example in the federal level of a long time manufacturing. It's kind of gone under the radar, but I like to point it out whenever I can have the opportunity. It's known as well, for a long time, it's been known as the government printing office. And I think now it's more often referred to as a government publishing office. But for many decades, they've manufactured and sold books, mainly books, but also other forms of like maps, I think, pamphlets, and in the public, general public, or businesses, they can buy those books. Now they have an online bookstore now. They have an online bookstore where you can buy books that has been manufactured by the government. The government does make some things. The U.S. federal government, they run that government publishing office, and they have been done so for many decades. So there's precedent there too. And then we can. So if they can do it there, why not expanded to other industries. The states, counties, cities, and the national federal government should go much more into owning the means of production of industry, along with recreation, entertainment, the whole works. There's no need to limit ourselves to just a small little bit. How do they acquire those industries? Well, they can, in part, through taxation. Through taxation, they can take those industries in lieu of payment. Then once they have garnered a large part of the industry, then you can get to use the profits, the revenue they generate through the industry to pay for the operations of the government. That could take a lot of the burden off of the workers. The common worker should not have to be funding so much of the government expenditures. There's no reason. The common worker should be a last resort for revenue, not as it is now as a first resort. So but either way, yeah, we can transfer wealth peacefully. No need to go to the guillotines. No need for blood on the streets. Nobody has to even go to prison. Just simple taxation system that peacefully and non-violently transfers wealth by way of changing of title on ownership of assets of the very wealthy. And I think that it wouldn't even have to be the upper class, just the extreme wealth. Like I'm thinking about, say, the top 0.01%, like 0.01% of the population could be subject to these new asset taxes that transfers their ownership of their title to the people in the state. And that would be a progressive one too. So like the ones that have for starters 0.01% that are just barely met that threshold, they'd face the smallest asset tax. But those on the, of course, and then just get to be higher and higher percentage of the tax of the asset tax that the wealthy would face as they get higher and higher up on that on the ladder of wealth. That we can do it. I mean, who's going to oppose it? Do you think like the 99%er thing going to be, oh no, those poor wealthy people they're not gonna have as many yachts and they're not going to be able to have another fourth or fifth villa on the Mediterranean. Oh, they're poor people. You're going to cry for them. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the 99% will be like, yeah, awesome. Take the revenue burden off of us. We shouldn't have to be struggling so hard to pay bills and have to pay so much taxes too off the top of our paycheck. We could shift the burden, the tax burden onto the wealthy. I think the 99%, the silent majority, are going to be, yeah, they're going to be thumbs up, right on. Let's do it. So just need to get the word out that this is possible. You can do it. It has been done in the past, and we can do it in the future. Don't have to be all mean and angry, and no need for all the guillotines. No need. Yeah, we just can do it in a nice, friendly, peaceful manner that's kind and respectful. And don't you have to even rock many boats. So I'm sure some of the very wealthy will throw a tantrum. So what? Let them go ahead. But this is what we say. We should say this is what we're going to do with it, whether you like it or not. We are the many. They are the few. We need to leverage those facts. Okay, I guess that I'm going to cut this off now. I think this has gone long enough. Hope I've got my point across. And thanks for watching.